Rain is something we're all used to. We either have an umbrella or a jacket ready in case it starts to pour. It doesn't really bother us very often. What if it rains for days and the streets get too wet to go outside? When you find out you can't pay the interest rate on the house you want to buy, how do you react when the value of your investments drops or when you're fired without getting paid extra? It's true that we live in a time with problems like these that keep us up at night with fears and make our days sad. It doesn't need to be this way though. Even though our society has a lot of problems right now, we can learn to stay centered. Here are some ways to be stoic in the present day. Stoicism is an old Greek philosophy that tries to help us go from being exposed to the chaos of the world to being calm and unaffected by it, building yourself up for long-lasting peace of mind. But as with any practice that includes changing how you feel or act, it takes work and sometimes sacrifice. The Stoic work is to understand what is within our control and what is not, and the only thing we can control is how we react to events, not the events themselves. Things we can change can happen, but we can't completely stop bad things from happening. They're often unavoidable. A dog being tied to a cart was used by the Stoic philosopher Zeno of Citium to explain the Stoic view. If a dog is tied to a cart and wants to follow, it is pulled along, making what it wants to do happen because it has to. The dog will be forced to follow, though, if it doesn't already. The same is true for men. They will have to do what is meant for them, even if they don't want to. Anything that we can't control, like everything that happens in the world, is represented by the cart. We are tied to the world by a leash, and we can either run with it or fight it and get pulled. Being stoic is like going along with the flow. Imagine that you are at work and your boss tells you that the coffee machine you depend on is going to be taken away. Your free coffee every day is gone all of a sudden. I think this would be very bad for most of us. You decide how to react in this situation. The machine is either present or not. You can either go along with the change by accepting that it is out of your hands, or you can wallow in the sadness of not having coffee. Getting better inside is the most important thing, because depending on outside things to make you happy leaves you vulnerable to a chaotic world that you can't control. Stoic thinkers believe in compatibilism, which means that the world is not completely set in stone. All events have a cause, but sometimes we can only change what we do in response to that cause. For instance, we can choose not to give in to the urge to eat cake, but we can't change the fact that the urge exists. Let's not say that we shouldn't try to make things better in the outside world, but we also shouldn't count on good things to happen. We still need to call and make an appointment to fix our car. It won't fix itself. We can still keep track of how much work we're doing, because that's something we can change. You shouldn't blame yourself if the tech turns out to be a crook and takes your car. That was out of your control. It's one thing to talk about the old philosophy of Stoicism, but what about putting it into practice in our everyday lives? Because when it was first thought of, Stoicism was for everyone, from slaves to the Emperor of Rome. Then why not today? Most of us get caught up in things that we think will make us happy. Our minds tell us that the next thing we buy, a new car, the newest smartphone, or the pricey watch, will finally make us happy. We feel bad when we can't get these things because, well, we can't afford them. It's like the world doesn't want us to be happy, and there's nothing we can do about it. But the truth is that things only make you happy for a short time. Your car will break down, and your phone will freeze up at some point. Hedonic adaptation makes us want something new and better, even when the things we already have still work perfectly. It's a circle that never ends. To get out of the shopping trap, we need to change how we feel about the things we buy and the adrenaline they give us. You can practice what the Stoics refer to as voluntary discomfort to accomplish this. This is when you do something that makes you feel bad, that you normally enjoy. Most of the time, this is done by taking a cold shower instead of a warm one. But you could also keep your new phone until it breaks, put up with the freezing and crackling, and miss every new phone launch. Start small if that's too much. Leave your phone on your table, desk, or somewhere else when you go to the bathroom next time. Do not use doom scrolling to pass the time or hurt yourself. Instead, sit on the toilet and think. Are you going somewhere hot today? Close the windows and turn off the air conditioning. Better yet, walk. Stoic philosophy was practiced by Emperor Marcus Aurelius of Rome. He was emperor of the empire from 161 CE until his death in 180 CE. Many people thought of him as a great philosopher-king, though this may not be true. He put down his thoughts that were inspired by Stoicism as a leader, probably to keep himself calm while taking on big duties. They were only meant for his own use and weren't meant to be shared with many people, but luckily we can see them now. The group of writings is called Meditations, which is also known as the Inner Citadel. They show how Marcus Aurelius used what he had learned about Stoicism in his daily life as emperor. Here are some words that might help you get into a Stoic frame of mind. We should employ the mind in all parts of life. When things occur which at first seem worthy of high estimation, we should strip them naked and view their meanness, and cast aside these pompous descriptions of them by which they seem so glorious. Marcus Aurelius often thought about how his food didn't give him the joys and emotions that he naturally got from it. A fish is just food that you need to stay alive. Don't pay attention to the good feelings and happiness of being full. If you want to bring your best lunch to work, break it down into its most basic parts. Croutons are just wheat that has been smashed into flour and mixed with yeast to make bread. The salad is just leaves and flowers of a plant. After that, the bread is broken up and dried in the oven. This way, when you have to eat food that you don't like, or when the service gets your order wrong, you won't be as stressed out about having to eat it or missing something better. The food in lunch is just fuel for the day. Marcus Aurelius wrote a lot about how we understand and talk to other people. As a way of thinking king about our relationships and feelings, he accepted Stoic philosophy. Stoic thinkers believe that the world was created by an intelligent being and that people are also a part of that intelligent being. People shouldn't hate someone smart just because they are smart, since you are smart too. It's like the Hindu idea of Brahman, which is the God that is everywhere. I can't be mad at or hate my kinsman. We were made to help each other, like 2 feet, hands, eyelids, and the upper and lower rows of teeth. To be in opposition to each other is against nature. All anger and aversion are in opposition. We may think of ourselves as competing with others. For example, we put others down to get better grades at school and raises at work, but that is a guaranteed way to be mean and envious your whole life. If you think everyone is smart, it would be silly to try to put other people below you. You are the same, and it goes against nature to treat others less than you. Seldom are people found unhappy because they don't pay attention to the movements and intentions in other people's souls. But people who don't pay attention to the movements of their own souls or their affections must be unhappy. This tells us to pay attention to what we can change. Our attitude. Analyzing other people will usually make you unhappy. There are times when we think too much about why angry people act the way they do. We have doubts about their goals and their success. A lot of us know someone who can't stop whining or talking about other people at work. They're always talking about what their co-workers have and never seem to be happy. They probably should spend their time working on their own mind instead, since they can't change the minds of other people. Let's be on guard, as I said, without any doubt or hostility. Aurelius is telling himself to be ready for any attack or betrayal, But he also says not to assume that other people are out to hurt him. Again, we shouldn't think too much about what other people want, but we also shouldn't expect that no one will do us harm either. While working on a project with friends, every student has learned that one person will not do their part. But you should also never judge someone based on the idea that they won't. While letting other people take up too much of your mind, you may unintentionally contribute to group trouble. But really, if you're working with 3 other people, it's likely that at least one of them won't do their fair share. Be ready for it, but don't be suspicious or hostile. When you are mad at men's mistakes and bad behavior, remember that everyone is moving toward what they think is their rightful goal. But what if you say that it's not their rightful goal? So tell them what to do, teach them better, and don't get mad at them. Basically, we can disagree with someone even though we're pretty sure we're right, but getting angry with them only makes things worse and isn't a good way to get them to change their mind. They have what they believe to be the right course of action in mind, so we shouldn't judge them negatively. Instead of showing our anger, we should try to teach them. This quote from Aurelius is about the culture war that is still going on. Each side thinks they are right and is okay to insult and get angry at the other side. Not that both sides are right, but sincerely trying to convince people has become less important, especially on social media these days. During the culture war, there are many attempts to teach, but they are often filled with snark and probably aren't meant to really change people's minds. They seem more interested in getting likes, shares, and approval from people who already believe in them than in reaching out to others. We wouldn't need to make fun of other people if we treated them like smart parts of a plan. With these tools, we would try to help them see the right way to move forward. People who follow the Stoic method can help you deal with life's pain in a way that makes you seem stoic. The goal is to not care about what the universe brings you, no matter what it is. You've strengthened your inner fortress and are ready for both good and bad luck. Stoicism is not a philosophy that absolves us of responsibility for problems we can't change, but it does admit that a lot of things are beyond our individual control. We can only judge ourselves by how hard we try. When we look at the world's biggest problems, the answers are out of reach for most people. Our only job is to do what we can, make moves where we can, and think about how well we did. What we can change is all that we can change. In the year 300 BC, Zeno was a very rich trader who lived in Cairo. He was going from Phoenicia to Pus when his boat sank with all of his goods on board. This very rich man became very poor very quickly because of that one event that neither Zeno nor anyone else could have stopped. How would you react if you were Zeno, if the force of nature swept all of your hard work away in a single raindrop? What is the appropriate reaction? Are you going to be mad? Sad? Would you think that life has lied to you? The majority of us would react in these ways, but Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, did not. One small change can last forever, and a small shift in how you frame your mind can lead to bigger and more important changes in the future. Acceptance and disinterest are the cornerstones of Stoicism. Zeno came up with and taught Stoicism after reading the works of Socrates and other great thinkers. Zeno said that we don't have much control over what happens to us, but we do have control over how it affects us, and we should make good use of this power. Rather than crying over milk that was spilled or things that were killed in this case, Zeno focused on staying calm and neutral no matter what was going on. People today think of Stoics as unbreakable and not prone to emotional outbursts like fits of rage or worry. But that wasn't what Stoicism was all about in the beginning. Stoicism was a way of seeing, describing, and comprehending the world rather than just a way to label emotionless people. It was a way of life that has been around for hundreds of years. People today can use Stoic philosophy in the same ways that people did thousands of years ago, and it still has the same positive effects. Stoicism helps us deal with the bad feelings that come from bad situations and turn them into thoughts that give us a new way of seeing the world. Every person in the world has had different situations, which means they have a variety of points of view. People knew a lot about the Stoics' general philosophy because they met, talked, and taught philosophy in public. They thought that following Stoic principles could help everyone, so it didn't make sense for them to keep this information secret in school or house grounds. This meant that anyone, from a slave to an emperor, could learn how to be Stoic, and many did. Epictetus, whose name means acquired because he was once a slave, Seneca, a famous politician, and Marcus Aurelius, both Roman emperors and one of the most powerful people in history, are some of the most famous Stoics in the world. Early Stoics led the fight against injustice and avoided all kinds of segregation. They even made up the word cosmopolitan, which means citizen of the world. These days, places like New York, Toronto, Dubai, and London come to mind when we hear that word because of how different they are. The Stoics believed in this kind of community and unity, even though it wasn't popular at the time. Women could learn about Stoicism and even become Stoics on their own. So why do so many people choose to live a Stoic lifestyle? Our feelings can get in the way of things in a world full of sudden turns of events. We don't really feel sad when bad things happen to us. We feel sad when bad things happen to us out of the blue. It is good that it rains because it helps our plants grow, gives our animals water, and makes the air cool and wet. But the truth is that it's never a good time to be outside when that dark cloud comes over without an umbrella. Then why don't we start to cry when it rains? Because we've learned to expect rain even when things are bad. The weather is out of our hands, so we can't avoid it. The rain stops and the light comes back, even though it stinks. To put it another way, Stoicism tells us to expect that everything bad that can happen will happen. Imagine the worst thing that could happen and be okay with the fact that it's possible. Voluntary discomfort is one of the Stoic routines that is meant to make you feel more grateful. Do things like sleep on the floor of your kitchen, take cold showers instead of hot ones, and eat only potatoes for a few days. If you have the right mindset, this exercise will help you see that no matter how hard things get, you'll still make it through and maybe even do better. By being able to handle these tough situations, we indirectly train our minds to deal with future bad luck. We are constantly bombarded with ads, which lead us to think that we will never be happy if we don't have the next best thing, look a certain way, or make a certain amount of money. Now more than ever, this statement is important. We don't know much when we come into the world. Things we learn as kids come from home, school, and seeing the world for ourselves. The thing is, these three types of information often teach us in different ways. The question is whether we need to remember everything we've learned. If we do that, we might be making false goals for our lives without realizing it, which would leave us upset and unhappy in the end. That's not a good way to live in the end. Instead, we should work on getting better for ourselves. When we do things, we should only do them for ourselves. Putting outside hopes or other feelings on top of what we're doing will almost always lead to failure. Of course, most of the time, we try to fill that void with outside things, like buying a big house, a fancy car, or even having a family. These things are sometimes done for their own sake, and not because they are good for us. But Stoicism says that if you live your life this way, you depend on outside forces to make you happy, and those forces can always fail. It seems like cars break down all the time, natural events destroy whole towns, and every year the divorce rate goes up. But even the things that are free in life cost you space, both in your mind and in your body. To make room in your life for the things that really matter to you, Seneca wrote, learn to live with less. We should base our happiness on how valuable we are as people, not on what we have or what we can physically get. We have to do our best to stay calm no matter what life throws at us, because no matter what we want, we can't change most of the things that happen to us, but we can change how we react to those things. The most important concept in Stoic philosophy is the dichotomy of power, and this is it. It is important to learn to tell the difference between what we can control and what we can't. Not the things we can't change should tell us how valuable we are, but the things we can. As a Stoic would say, working hard to reach your goals is good, but giving up when things don't go your way is not. Of course, making YouTube movies is a lot easier than being Emperor of Rome, but it can still be hard times. First, you have to come up with an idea, which takes a long time. Do some study on that idea, then throw it away, because it's bad. Start over, write the story for the video, make the video, edit it, add a title and picture, and do everything else before you hit upload. You are in charge of everything until you click upload. When you click the upload button, though, YouTube's system takes over. A lot of people still judge the success of their YouTube channel or Instagram account by how many views, users, or friends they have, which are mostly things you can't change. Stoics say that you should judge the success of your work by how hard you worked on it, not by how it turned out or what other people hope for. Believe in the process. Picture someone who has been working hard for 6 months now. Having changed his mind, he goes to his boss with this report because he thinks he deserves a raise. He goes home feeling like a king because the boss thanks him but doesn't give him the raise. He doesn't think about the possibility that the boss woke up mad, that someone else was more qualified at the time, or that the business was losing money and couldn't pay for it. He's still mad even though he doesn't know why. In order to get the raise he wanted, he could have been much happy if he had only focused on writing a good performance report and kept doing what he was doing. From the right point of view, his goal wouldn't have been lowered, it would have been put off. Reframing your mindset is essential. A real Stoic doesn't judge their success by how much money they make. Instead, they find comfort in the fact that they don't need all the things that money can buy to live a good life. Being wise, brave, temperate, and fair are the 4 main qualities of Stoicism. Wisdom is the ability to distinguish between what is internal and what is external, as well as the ability to choose how to react to the things that happen to us. Viktor Frankl once said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and that space is our power to choose our response." Courage, 2 words. Keep going, even when things get hard. What I just did was show balance by saying more with fewer words and doing more with less. Stoics think that the limit of wealth should simply be having what is necessary and then having what is enough, while Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are battling it out at the top of the Forbes list. Being fair is the most important virtue. This verse says that everyone should be kind to each other because we were all born to help each other, not ourselves. One of the most well-known African leaders in the world was Nelson Mandela. Because he fought against racism, he was given a life sentence and had to serve 27 years before he could be freed. After he got out of jail, he was chosen president of South Africa. Many people thought he was going to treat harshly anyone who had anything to do with apartheid or his imprisonment. He didn't, though, of course. Mandela read the works of Marcus Aurelius while he was in jail and learned many of the core ideals of Stoicism, which he then lived by for the rest of his life. Nelson Mandela told his people not to seek the heads of those who did wrong, but to instead attempt to calm down and start over. He made it clear that they had no power over the past and that the only thing they could do was build a better country going forward. This is how Stoics act. Stoicism is at the heart of modern medicine's rational emotive behavioral therapy and logotherapy, among other therapies. REBT helps people figure out what kinds of negative thoughts are making them feel and act badly. It lets you use logic to question the reasons behind all these bad thoughts. Once you see that many of them aren't true, you can change them with ideas that are better for you. The Stoic idea that people are driven by purpose underpins logotherapy, on the other hand. We can give our lives meaning and happiness even when things are very bad if we just figure out what that purpose is. As most of us know, though, this isn't easy to do. Like everything else, it's a process. Our problems with happiness need to be fixed by changing the way we think. Out with the old and in with the new. We need to work on self-worth by changing how we think about what is valuable to focus on the things we can control. We can stop worrying about things we can't change, and our lives will be happy and more fulfilling in general. Through past and present storms, Stoicism helps us find cooler, more peaceful water. And if our ship sinks and we all drown, we can rest in the knowledge that we lived a good life, even if it wasn't as long as we had hoped. Remember, everything comes to an end. In August of this year, I uploaded my first video to this channel. Before that, I had been on the fence for months about starting a YouTube account. What do you think people would say? People might not like the vids and say, "I'm not talking sense." What right do I have to talk about these things? These were the things that kept going through my mind. Someone like this probably feels the same way when they have to start something or give a talk in front of a group of people. We can't reach our full potential because we're afraid of being judged. We need to go back to the beginning of time to understand why we care so much about what other people think about us. Our species, like many others, developed to get along with others. We needed close-knit groups, bands and clans to stay alive. Hunters and I would stay safe together and protect each other from attackers if they were brave enough to try. We did well when we were together. At that time, being kicked out of the group meant death almost always. It was nearly impossible for a single person to build a marking house, go hunting, and keep themselves safe from animals in the past. Sad to say, even though our society has grown to the point where we don't have to worry about being harmed by animals and have the tools and resources to feed, clothe, and house ourselves. The need to be a part of a group still doesn't work well with the way things are now. We were afraid of being left outside in the cold back then. Today, we're afraid of being banned on Twitter for something we said, mocked for posting the same clothes over and over on Instagram, or getting hate comments on our YouTube videos from people who say your voice is getting old and boring. You see, social media has made this awful feeling of being shunned much worse. We brought this need to be affirmed and seen right away to light by making likes and dislikes. That number can be addictive because it shows how many people are behind you. We stop saying what we really want to say and start saying what we know will get us the most likes. It doesn't take long before you start sharing certain thoughts, pictures and comments to get other people's attention and approval. What number of times have you seen your favorite online artists and leaders quickly change their minds? It seems like they're no longer being themselves and are only doing or saying things that the program will like. I made a movie about Unit 731 and the terrible things the Japanese government did during W-Bound. The video didn't do very well, though, because YouTube said it wasn't material that advertisers would be interested in. That's fine. People will stop saying anything that might upset the rich people if they are socially and politically conditioned to do so. Like they say, you have the right to free speech, but only when your mic is off. I always felt different as a child. I did have friends and wanted to be a part of the group, but I had questions about the world that no one wanted to talk about. After all, who wants to talk about death and the future on the school playground? I felt like a puzzle piece from a different set because of that. I grew up afraid that everyone would think I was weird and different, so I did my best to hide my psychological fear so I could fit in with everyone else. A lot of the people who are watching this movie right now were probably kids like me, who were afraid of being picked on and hid who they really were, so they wouldn't be seen as different. If that sounds like you, listen up. Stop worrying so much about what other people think and start living your life as it really is. It is healthy to care what other people think, but it is harmful to try to change who we are just to please other people. If you choose to be yourself, you will enjoy your time on this moving rock a lot more. And if someone turns you down because of it, you'll know they were never meant to be with you. I get it if that sounds like a big dream that has nothing to do with reality. We do need to be viewed fairly by other people. That's the sad truth of the matter. That's what makes our society work at its core. We both agree on something. If someone breaks the law, they will be jailed. We all agree on a set of moral rules, and anyone who breaks them is shunned by the group. People rate us at school, at work, and in general society. Despite how depressing it may sound, rumors and ostracism are beneficial to the group as whole. The relationship between chatter and ostracism and the unity and usefulness of experimental groups was examined in a study by Stanford professor Rob Willer in 2014. Rob's study showed that groups that let their members talk about each other and get rid of members who weren't doing their part were much better at staying together and not being selfish than groups that didn't let their members do these things. Most of the time, we think of ostracism in a bad way. Its much more important job, though, was shown by this study. It keeps weak and helpless people from being bullied and written on. Sometimes when people work together on a school project, you quickly notice that one person won't do anything because they know the other people will make up for it. How does that make you feel? Imagine that you could kick these people out of the group and then spread rumors about how bad they are at working with others. At first, it might seem harsh, but because we're naturally afraid of being left out, these people would usually see what they're doing for what it is and behave better when they were let back into the group. It also stops the selfish people from taking advantage of the weaker people in the group, so those people can reach their full potential without worrying about being harmed. The researchers came to the conclusion that people who were kicked out of the group had to behave more like the rest of the group, which was more helpful. So, yes, we do need to be good team players for society to work well. One thing that should never come before being a part of a group is being ourselves. We should never be afraid of being shunned so much that we don't say the things that are important to us because we think someone will judge us. We need to be aware that there will come a time in our lives when we'll question everything we were told as kids. Don't let the fear of what the people you grew up with would think stop you from becoming who you want to be when you become who you want to be. To keep society running smoothly, people need to care about what other people think. But when caring about what other people think gets in the way of our own decision-making, we need to stop and think. You have your own thoughts, ideas, dreams, and goals. Saying that you want to quit school to become a comedian shouldn't make you afraid of being looked down upon. What do you think people would say? You want to put videos on YouTube. What do you think people would say? You wish to be with someone who is not the same as you in terms of religion or culture. What do you think people would say? A lot of people don't do what they love because of this one question. It's like a chain around our necks that won't let us breathe. We're like elephants in a show that are being held back by a line that might not even exist in real life. Being truly free means having the guts to stand up for what you believe in, even if other people are saying something different. It means being able to stand when everyone else is sitting and run when everyone else is standing. It means being your true self, no matter what other people tell you to be. Instead, it's not easy to get the guts to be hated. Remember that it's in our nature to care what other people think. If we took a small step away from that, we would be going against our biology, which isn't fun. We can do it though, which is good news. Realize first and foremost that everyone, including you, worries about their own fears. Being afraid of being judged by others makes us feel like everyone is thinking about us and thinking badly of us when we're out in public. As you say, though, most of the time people are worried about themselves and not thinking about anyone else. They often use their fears against us when they speak out against us, trying to bring us down to feel better about themselves. Do not let them do that. The main difference between ostracization in the past and today is that in the past, only close family members and members of your clan could exclude you. Today, though, thanks to social media, anyone can say what they think about us and share it, so we have to pay attention. We're taking criticism from people we wouldn't take help from, which is a bad thing. Just think about it. You wouldn't let this stranger into your house because you were afraid they would invade your privacy. So why would you let them into your head? People who judge you and don't let you reach your full potential aren't always strangers. Sometimes they're family and friends from childhood. That's when we need to remember ourselves that living apart from the group doesn't have as many bad effects as it used to. The tools and resources you need to do well away from your main group are there for you, and you can even find another group that will accept you for who you are and not try to change you. I know that in this video and many others, I've said some bad things about social media, but there are also some good things. If you no longer feel like you belong with the group you were born into or grew up in, the internet has people from all over the world who are ready to accept you. It's just a matter of time before you find them. Lao said, "Inning care about people's approval, and you will be their prisoner. The courage to be disliked is the key that opens the prison doors and sets you free to be the person you've always wanted to be." In the year 165 CE, a black wave of death came from the east and spread around the world faster than anyone could have thought. It was named the Antonine Plague after Caesar Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Augustus, who was emperor of Rome at the time. During his rule, this plague killed more than 18 million people and almost destroyed the Roman Empire so badly that whole armies could only scratch the surface. It didn't, though. Even though there was an economic crisis, many attacks, and a hard pandemic while Marcus Aurelius was in charge, the empire did very well. It is during times of trouble that real leaders are put to the test, and Caesar always rose to the situation. Aurelius was a philosopher first and foremost. He is known as the last of the 5 good emperors of ancient Rome, a term that Niccolò Machiavelli came up with in the 1500s. His Stoic philosophy set him apart from the people who came before him. In the midst of the plague, he put his pride aside and broke the rules by surrounding himself with skilled and knowledgeable government workers instead of wealthy lords and nobles. He paid attention to what people had to say and let them make their own choices. He hired the best doctors to lead the fight against the disease that was killing off a lot of Romans. To keep the economy going, he cancelled bills, sold imperial property and goods, and took money from the top class of Rome. This gave him time to focus on the growing economic problem. During a time when fear spread through the empire, Marcus stayed cool and taught his people to do the same. Just when things looked like they couldn't get any worse, Marcus heard that Avidius Cassius, an old friend and former general, had led a revolt against him and called himself Caesar. Marcus's reaction was strange given the situation, but he was known to be very disciplined and stoic. Instead of getting angry and starting to kill the man who was a threat to the empire, his family, and his legacy right away, Marcus waited to give the defector a chance to calm down. When he didn't, Marcus told them they had to catch Cassius, but not kill him. The last of the 5 good emperors was a student of Stoic philosophy. He said about it, "Forgive a man who has wronged one, to remain a friend to one who has broken friendship, and to remain faithful to one who has broken faith." His personal thoughts while promoting and running the government show how much the works of Seneca and Epictetus affected him. He didn't get mad, let his feelings affect how he thought, or dislike his enemy. He stood strong and did what was right, which helped calm an empire that was already tense times. Marcus Aurelius used Stoicism to deal with the stress of everyday life. As the leader of the most powerful empire in history, you can imagine how stressful his life must have been. In Marcus Aurelius's personal journals, Meditations, which contain his private thoughts, this rule was written down. It tells us how to make smart choices, fair judgments, brave actions, and temperate choices in everything we do. It also tells us to be self-controlled, disciplined, and modest. In a nutshell, Meditations is a timeless work of Stoic philosophy that is still important today, just like it was in the days of old Rome. It's a guide to the main ideas of Stoicism written by the philosopher king himself. The dichotomy of power is one of the most important Stoic ideas that Marcus Aurelius talks about over and over again in the work. No matter how powerful he was, Caesar of Rome always told himself that he couldn't change what happened around him, but he could always change how he reacted to it. After thinking about this idea, Marcus's Meditations teach us 5 important and deep lessons that show how useful Stoicism is as a philosophy. Even thousands of years after Aurelius's rule, we can live better, happier lives if we understand these lessons. What you think about shows what kind of mind you have. How you see it makes all the difference. You're in charge. You can get rid of any misunderstandings you want, such as rounding the point, peace, total calm, and being brave. Epictetus and Seneca both wrote a lot about the power of vision before Marcus Aurelius. Then it makes sense that Aurelius agreed with them, since this is one of the most important ideas in Stoicism. Everything we experience is affected by how we see it. It's possible that your car won't start before a big meeting, or your boss might not give you the raise you think you deserve. That's right. Just like Marcus did when the plague hit, you have a choice whenever something is bothering you. Choosing to feel angry, hurt, down, or beaten will not help you in any way. You can also train your mind to not let things that are out of your control change how you see things. In this kind of self-discipline, you take charge of your life instead of letting other people or events decide how good it is. This idea was the basis of Marcus's whole rule. As a strong leader, he knew how much power he had and always kept his thoughts and feelings separate. His kingdom was being attacked by interesting groups, and there were uprisings within it, but he knew he couldn't change these things to help himself. His real strength came from how he thought about these terrible things. He didn't let these terrible, unfavorable results affect him, so he didn't react hastily. He took control of his own mind instead and was able to make fair choices without any feelings involved, even when things were very bad. The best way to get back at someone who copied you is to rain down imitations. The easy thing to do when someone dislikes us is to dislike them back. But what good would that do? When Cassius rose up against Marcus, it would have been easy for him to tell his men to capture and kill him brutally as a lesson to anyone else who dared to try to take his crown. Instead, he was kind and said he would forgive him. As we all know, people will never live up to our standards. Instead of letting their actions make us feel bad, it's smarter to focus on what we can control, being good, thoughtful, and compassionate. Just as nature takes every obstacle, every impediment, and works around it, turns it to its purposes, incorporates it into itself, so too, a rational being can turn each setback into raw material and use it to achieve its goal. Before anything else, the Stoics believed in the truth. They knew that life would be hard, but they didn't run away from it. Instead, they welcomed it. It's true that suffering is an important part of life. It makes you stronger, more resilient, and eventually leads to success. Once more, this concept is all about how we see things. Any problem we face can be seen as either a hindrance to our growth or a virtue, a test of how well we can deal with problems. It would be silly to try to avoid problems and struggles in life. They should be seen as a chance to make us stronger, not as a threat. That thing that gets in the way is always the thing that gets in the way. Accept the things that fate has tied you to, and love the people that fate has brought you together with. But love them with all your heart. According to Marcus Aurelius, the key to being a great person is to accept your fate as it is. This idea comes from the Stoic philosophy. Epictetus, no matter what happens to you, you have to love it, because it is your fate. Although he faced many problems in his life, he accepted his fate without complaining. His boss abused him and broke his leg, leaving him unable to walk again. Epictetus didn't spend the rest of his life feeling bad about himself. Instead, he took charge of his mind and said, "Do not wish for things to happen the way they happen. Instead, wish that what happens happens the way it happens, and then you will be happy." Accepting what the world has planned for you and not fighting it is not what makes a person strong. You could end your life right now. Let that decide what you do, say, and think. Seneca was the only person who knew and loved their fate more than anyone else. In 59 CE, Emperor Nero was in charge of Rome. He was unsafe and unfair. No one was safe from his anger, not even his own mother and sister. He was a cruel tyrant. After an unsuccessful attempt on his life, Nero rounded up all the people he thought were plotting against him and either sent them away or killed them. It was not true that Seneca was one of the people planning to kill Nero. Even though he had been his most trusted advisor, Nero did not spare him and told him to kill himself. But Seneca didn't fight the hand that fate dealt him. He not only accepted it, he was stoic until the very end of his life. Seneca cut his arm's veins and bled to death. Marcus Aurelius thought about how short his life was, even though he was one of the most important people in the world. In his situation, it would be easy for anyone to get drunk on power. But he kept reminding himself of the people who had come and gone and left nothing behind but the power they had so greedily gathered over their lives. In Meditations, Marcus looks to morals to help him live his best life and let go of small things that don't matter. He didn't think of death as depressing. Rather, he saw it as a reason to live a life of virtue and thankfulness for what we have. Marcus Aurelius was king of the Roman Empire, which had both good times and bad. People loved and hated him, and they said bad things about him. The dichotomy of control, there are some things we can control and others we can't, was something he constantly reminded himself of throughout it all. Which ones will you pay attention to? If we can learn to follow Marcus's examples by controlling how we see things, accepting others as they are, seeing life's challenges as chances to grow, loving our fate, and finally accepting that we will die, then we can truly live a good life, just like the philosopher king did. Talk about what a good man should be right away. You won't find the key to financial freedom in this tough economy in a get-rich-quick plan or from social media scammers trying to sell you their latest course. The truth is that the 2,000-year-old philosophy of Stoicism can teach us the most important things about getting rich. You'll learn what the Stoic philosophy says about how to get rich and why getting rich might not be what you really want by the end of this movie. How often do you see someone on social media saying they can help you with all of your money problems? Someone says they are a skilled investor, a great business owner, or an economic visionary. If you're like me, these plans to get rich quickly make you laugh. You still think about it, even if it's only for a moment. We stop and think because we all want to get rich in some way, even if we don't believe these fake teachers. Your financial position may be making you sad, or you may be having a hard time with debt and want to find a way out. You might be daydreaming about taking a fancy holiday in an apartment with a view. For some reason, society has taught us that we need money to do many things, so we want to be rich. How do we go about making it, my king? Focusing on what you can control is one of the most important ideas in Stoicism. Even though we can't always change what happens to us, we can change how we react to it. Maybe the key to getting the financial freedom we want is this simple idea: we should control how we feel about money. As an example, let's look at Warren Buffett. Even though he's worth $77 billion, he still lives in the house he bought for $31,559 years ago. Even though he got richer, he didn't give in to his feelings or buy expensive things just to show off to people he didn't care about. He stayed stable and didn't let the money rule him. He also kept his finances in order. Being healthy is an important part of being successful that most people don't give much thought to. The well-known phrase, "health is wealth," is true. Being healthy lets you think better, work harder, and enjoy the rewards of your hard work when they come up. There are a lot of challenges and problems on the way to wealth. It's not a straight line. You need to learn to be okay with being uncomfortable and keep going even when things get hard if you want to be successful. Stoicism tells us to accept pain by making ourselves unhappy first. This is known as voluntary discomfort. In the past, Stoics would wear clothes and eat only potatoes for a few days. It is thought that if you know you can get by with the bare necessities, you won't mind comfort as much. You don't have to get rid of all your clothes to practice being uncomfortable on purpose. Doing simple things like taking cold showers or eating boring food on purpose can help you learn how to be uncomfortable. This will not only help you deal with the times when things don't go your way, but it may also make you more thankful. Think of the worst thing that could happen and accept it as a real possibility. This is another way to accept pain. This will help you cope with the thought that the worst could happen and you'll still be fine. Not having enough money is already very painful, like when you feel bad that you can't go to a nice restaurant with your friends, or when you can't find a job that pays you what you're worth. It looks like money can make people very unhappy all the time. If you're ready for this loss, you'll feel free from the power that money has over you. After taking a chance to break free, you'll be more likely to take calculated risks. Making decisions based on risk can be awkward and scary, mostly because failure is an option. However, if you realize that you might fail, you can push yourself to be more creative and risk-taking. The people at the top of the Forbes list are all ready to take big risks. The idea of reusable rockets was thought to be impossible until Elon Musk came up with it. Mark Zuckerberg didn't be afraid to fight when he went into a market with big names. Plus, Jeff Bezos made online shopping famous at a time when many people thought the web was just a trend. Stoics think that failure is a chance to grow, not something to be afraid of. Our resolve is shaped by how we deal with setbacks. They also teach us about who we are and what we can become. To feel this way, we need to learn to separate the steps we take to become financially free from the end goal. We must remain in the present. Avoid thinking about how much an investment might grow in 5 years or how cool it must be to own a fancy car. Instead, concentrate on the beliefs, actions, and habits that will help you become financially successful. The Stoics stress 4 important values: being wise, being brave, being moderate, and being fair. We can use these ideas as we work toward financial freedom. Being wise helps us stay adaptable by teaching us new things and letting us weigh the risks and benefits of the choices we want to make. Having courage lets us take chances, like asking for a raise, moving jobs, or putting your trust in a seasoned financial advisor to help you get rich. When we spend money, we need to be able to control ourselves because we know that benefits are important, but so is being frugal. And finally, justice is how we pay it forward when we get lucky and our investments pay off. You can do this by helping your family and friends get ahead, giving to charity, or just telling other people how you got where you are now. Carpe diem, which means seize the day, is what the Stoics live by to stay in the present and enjoy every moment. When we focus on the present, we can tune out things that might pull us off track. Almost everyone gets rich by working hard. We'll be more likely to reach our goals and enjoy the process if we can learn to do deep work. You don't have to act on instinct to be present, though. Stoicism says the exact opposite. One of its most important ideas is to control our emotions and depend on reason. It's easy to get caught up in things like pants or cell phones these days, thinking that they will make us happy. Afterward, we become upset when we finally have the money to buy what we want. Having things doesn't really make us happy, though. They give us a short-lived rush of dopamine that makes us feel good, but it doesn't last long, and we're right back where we were before. When it comes to financial freedom, it's important to fight the urge to buy something or the guilt of not being able to. Set a goal and treat yourself to something you really want as a prize. Plan a fancy dinner to honor a good meeting at work or after graduation. Wait a few weeks before making a buy, marking, to make sure you really want it and aren't just interested in the thrill of having something new. This way, you don't have to buy something on the spur of the moment, and you can just enjoy the thing itself. Nelson Mandela was known for living by Stoic beliefs, which helped him lead when he got out of jail and became president of South Africa. People thought he would kill the people who wrongfully put him in jail, but he focused on starting over and bringing his country back together. He dealt with his bad feelings and kept his eye on his main goal, which was not payback, but making South Africa a better place for everyone. When you think about your financial goals, you should also not let your feelings get in the way. Getting mad at yourself when the value of a stock you bought drops won't make the stock worth less. Don't get upset because you spilled milk. Instead, learn from your mistake and move on to the next one. Markets don't make sense, and jobs disappear for a lot of different reasons. We can only try to keep our cool, which takes practice since money can make us feel a lot of different things. It's easy to think that how much money we have determines how much we value ourselves. Giving up our peace of mind for money and wanting to be rich won't make us more money. It will only make us unhappy and less likely to keep working hard for what we want. Being financially successful means learning to control yourself. When you're not defined by your wealth, you can make better choices and be more open to new opportunities. In the same way that we need to control our feelings to be smart about money, we need to stop trying to control things we can't change. Events in the world, recessions and inflation, can't be changed. Sometimes natural tragedies happen, and sometimes couples split up. The truth is that most of the things that happen to us are out of our hands. One of the most important tenets of Stoic philosophy is the capacity for accepting this truth. It teaches us not to use things we can't change to judge ourselves. Instead, judge your work and success by how hard you worked toward a goal, not by how well it turned out. While we're working to become financially free, we can make our lives happy and less stressful by changing what we value. We can continue to learn so that we can get better jobs, because making money is never completely in our hands. To make smart financial choices, we can learn things we don't already know. If we don't understand something, we can put our pride aside and ask for help. It's not possible to plan or guess for the money or wealth we want, though. Using the rules that the Stoic thinkers set out many, many years ago, you can make a new path for yourself and possibly find what you're looking for. Even if it's not a huge boat or a box full of gold, the freedom you'll find will make it feel better than those things. Freedom with money. They will still be with you when you get there, so you can keep living by them. Because being rich, in any way it looks to you, means giving in to desire. It's easy to want to spend money on things just because you can, but we should remember that things don't make us happy. Budgets are still important. The lessons of Stoicism can actually make you rich without you having to try some get-rich-quick plan. But what it really teaches us is that the point isn't to get rich, because freedom is a way of life, a path that never ends. People are free, happy, and satisfied. Rich, on the other hand, is just a goal. Rich can leave at any time, but freedom will always be there. Looking for happiness? Watch this video next to learn how to buy it with music. Money, what are your plans for the new year? For some of us, it's to get more done. For others, it's to lose weight or simply be healthy. It could be to spend more time with family and friends, or to write that book you've been putting off for a year. When the clock hits midnight on January 1st, most of us already have a list of goals we wish to achieve, things we hope to be better at, and habits we badly want to let go of, all within the next 365 days. There's a fresh sense of hope when we flip that last calendar page. In fact, it's just another day, but to most of us, it feels like a fresh start, a new beginning. And so, we stack up all the things we want to change about ourselves and all the goals we hope to achieve. Yet, year after year, most of us fail to achieve all, if any, of these goals. There's a staggering lack of follow-through with New Year's resolutions. Most of us find it very difficult to stick to them. We start with a bundle of energy and motivation, but all that fades as the year goes on. Gyms that are packed in January aren't back to normal capacity by March. Healthy eating habits stop as soon as a stressful life event occurs, and saving habits fade away once an emergency that requires financial attention happens. To add insult to injury, not only do we end up not achieving what we set out to do, but that failure makes us feel even less motivated to make the next goal, to pursue the next dream. It leads us down a path that slowly convinces us that these goals aren't even worth setting in the first place. It's no wonder that the older you get, the less likely you are to create New Year's resolutions. The screams, loud bang of fireworks, and light shows in the sky as the clock strikes midnight get less exciting with every passing year. When you think about it like that, the situation seems quite grim, but it doesn't have to be this way. The truth is, one of the biggest reasons most people fall short of their resolutions is they don't have the willpower and mental fortitude to push through the difficult situations. But by learning from the Stoics, we can better understand not just how to follow through on our set agenda for the year, but how to create proper goals right off the bat. Because while it's true that barely 10% of people stick to their New Year's resolutions, nothing says that you can't be one of those people. Understanding New Year's resolutions from the Stoic point of view begins, like all things with Stoicism, with the question of control. What is in our control? People often like to pin down very ambitious and, quite frankly, unrealistic goals at the start of the year. A lot of times, we end up with goals that are beyond our control, which sets us up for failure before we've even got the chance to try. Let's say your goal for the year is to lose weight. The first step in the Stoic handbook would be to figure out and acknowledge what isn't in our control. Eating healthy and exercising regularly are within our control, but other things, like how ripped we look, for example, are largely determined by how fat is distributed across our body, which in turn is determined largely by genetics. So, if our goal is to look a certain way, instead of simply to lead a healthier lifestyle, we're setting ourselves up for failure. There are other more apparent truths people tend to ignore when drafting their resolutions, things like the fact that our willpower is finite. When people decide to become more productive or fight off an addiction, they fail to realize that the machinery that allows us to fight our urges isn't infinite. Every time we fend off our craving for some unhealthy food, for example, it becomes that much harder to maintain that discipline later in the day. That's one of the main reasons people who start out strong with their resolutions don't end up following through with them to the end. At the beginning of the year, our willpower is refreshed. We're riding on the high of starting from the beginning. But as days turn into weeks and weeks into months, that willpower is drained ever so slowly, such that the motivation that we started the year with just can't carry us any further. Stoicism preaches that we should be aware of these mental and physical limitations. Pretending that we'll be able to strong-arm our desires is naive. A better method of sticking to our goals, then, would be to minimize situations where we have to use willpower. Humans are naturally wired to take the path of least resistance, so let that path be the one that you want for the year. If you want to lead a healthier life, start by giving out all the junk food you have in the house and replacing it with healthier options. That way, when you're hungry for a snack, it'll be easier to grab an apple from the fridge than drive to the store to get chips. This is a much better approach than trying to make it from one cheat meal to the next. If you want to work out more, pay for a gym membership to the gym that's closest to where you live. Yes, it might not be the fanciest or have the best trainers, but the easier it is for you to get there, the more likely you are to keep working consistently through the year. For those who have the willpower to push through, we're usually stopped by external forces, like having a blown AC just as the heat wave of summer rolls around, or a bad breakup that forces us to binge eat as we cry ourselves to sleep every night. The reasons these things stop us from pursuing our goals aren't because they're inherently bad, but more so because they're unexpected. It's just like rain when we're out without an umbrella and it starts to rain. We feel bad, but we don't cry and stop everything we were doing, because while getting drenched is a bad thing, we've learned to accept the possibility of rain and in turn had to deal with its consequences. We go home, dry our clothes, make a hot cup of cocoa, and get on with our day. We need to learn to do the same in every aspect of our lives. We need to realize that bad things will happen. That's just life. We can either treat these bad occurrences like a tsunami destined to destroy everything we've built, or we can treat them like rain, just a tiny temporal inconvenience. According to the Stoics, that's the difference between experiencing a setback and suffering from it. Setbacks are a part of life, they're normal routine, and we should expect them. But we must learn not to get beaten by these setbacks. Instead, philosophy professor William B. Irvine says, "It might be helpful to think of setbacks as a form of flattery from the Stoic gods, a chance to prove to yourself that you are more than that adversary. This removes the knee-jerk reaction of why me, and instead allows you to focus more on what needs to be done to scale the hurdle and continue your journey toward your vision." Most of us think of the year as a sprint rather than the marathon that it is, which is why once we experience any setback, we often throw everything out and say that one dreaded sentence, "I'll just start again next year." By switching our minds from a sprint to a marathon, we can focus on the process without worrying too much about the end goal. Instead of saying you want to do 20 pull-ups by the end of the year and beating yourself up when you haven't reached that goal in March, it's better to instead give yourself the goal of trying to do one more pull-up. As simple as it sounds, this allows you to focus more on the process of doing a pull-up and getting better each time without worrying too much about some arbitrary end goal. The reason we often wait until the new year to set goals is because of something called the fresh start effect. Characterized by its name, we're more likely to set new targets for ourselves when we feel like we're having a fresh start. It's why you're more likely to decide to make a life change on Monday or just after a holiday. But the truth is that no particular date on the calendar is more special than another. Monday isn't better than Wednesday, and January 1st isn't any better than March 13th. The only thing special about these days and dates is the idea of worth that we've placed on them. And while it's good to take full advantage of this fresh start effect, it's counterproductive to tie ourselves so strongly to them that we don't make the changes we need until we get a fresh start. So, if you've already fallen short of your goals, you don't have to wait for next year to start again, because today is as good as any to start again.